This is the Open University.
Hello, my small perky chihuahuas, pomegranates, enthusiastic, jumping beans, whatever. This is the open, it's the so-called, inverted commas, soi-disant, entre guillemets, the Open University. It's actually me just rambling about whatever I feel like rambling about. And I made some notes for this one. I don't know, I've had trouble trying to decide a topic because the things that you're interested in, there was a comment under the last videos saying, thanks for giving us your holiday impressions, but we'd be more interested in your takes on current affairs and things. I don't reproduce, newspaper think pieces, columns, news stories even. I'm not interested in being that topical. I'm interested in the things that really excite me, and they're probably not things that are going to excite everybody. There might be some overlaps here and there, but the things that... What I've always done really is I've searched out value in places where there isn't necessarily a great deal of promise. And wherever I go, I find things that excite me and interest me. And visually, my record of that is my Tumblr page. So what I've done in the last couple of videos has been just to show you pictures from my Tumblr page and talk about them. And that's really what I want to do in this one as well. I've moved to Paris the beginning of... December. I came via Munich and Strasbourg, and in Munich there was this a subway station designed by Ingo Maurer. Ingo Maurer worked with Prisonique, which is a French supermarket chain that had very design-conscious values in the late 1960s. So I think in about 1969 he designed this range of coat hangers called Flair. If you go to the Muséum des Arts Décoratifs here in Paris, you'll see Flair. You'll see Ingo Maurer's work with a guy called Mark Held, the director within Prisonique of design. So they had an amazing catalogue at about that time. In fact, one of the ideas I've had recently is to reproduce the Prisonique catalogue of 1969 with all the objects in it remade, that you could order now. And this is really relating to my fascination with Relique, which is this new boutique, sort of curated second-hand clothes boutique. A lot of the stuff I wear now is from Relique. They do a good line in sort of quilted dressing gowns and pajama-like clothes, but also, retro, early 70s, all through the 70s really is their kind of period to hit, the sweet spot to hit. In Strasbourg, actually, on the way here, I stopped at my second favourite shop after Relique for that same kind of repertoire of clothes, and that's called Frock and Roll. It's on the Rue Munch in Strasbourg, which is the street where the art school is. Here it's called the Haute École des Arts du Rhin. And so I got a couple of shirts and things there, some of which were too small for me, so Naomi's wearing them. I always buy things just, this could be for a man or a woman, it could be for me or my girlfriend, it could be, just whatever works for either of us. And that's why we start dressing more and more like each other. We share this appreciation of the 70s, but it's interesting when somebody who wasn't even born in the 70s, Naomi was born in 1992, gets a kind of retrospective appreciation for it. And what is it about the 70s? It's the optimism. It's partly the unisex kind of feeling, which was around then for the first time, that men and women could interchange their clothes, could both wear floral prints or whatever it is. We were really into kind of rose prints and a lot of pinks and things like that just now. But anyway, so it's a long story and it might seem crazy, but the hangers in Relique are these Ingo Maurer hangers. He died in, I think, 2019. He designed his Westfriedhof metro station in Munich in 2009, putting a lot of blue lights and things, blue and yellow lights in the metro station. But he died in 2019, and so because we'd seen these coat hangers in Relique. I was really excited to find a bunch of them in my local junk shop in Berlin, the corner shop where I bought my accordion and recorded all my accordion records with. Junk and shops and flea markets and curated secondhand are really rocking our world. Relique is doing really well just now in Paris. It's got pop-up stores in the big department stores. The big department stores in Paris are sort of unlike any others in other cities where they're all going out of business. Like in my native Edinburgh, Binns and Jenners and Forsyths have all gone, all been swept away. They were lumpen, conservative, boring places and were not able to adapt with the times. The ones in Paris are quite the opposite. Not only have they thrived, they've relaunched and they've got big name architects to redesign their buildings. They've spun off cultural institutions, and so you have the Galerie Lafayette with its amazing dome, where there's a cafe called Coutume Cafe where you can sit at the rails as if you're in a grand opera. Sit at the rails of this dome, and they have a light show and a kind of music and spectacle event every half hour actually, which you can see from there. If you go on the same floor as Coutume Cafe, which is a very good coffee cafe, within the department store you can go and see the pop-up store of Relique. Relique also has a pop-up store in Printemps, which is it's a couple of blocks away from there. You also have things like Le Bon Marché on the left bank down by Sèvres Babylone, and which is, it's very elegant and there's a lot of the best of everything. And then probably the best of them all is Samaritain, which is relaunched just this year with a design by Sana, the Japanese architect Sana, and has a wavy corrugated glass front now looking onto the Rue de Rivoli. And some fantastic things inside. It's not so popular just now. I think it may have aimed a little bit high. One of the interesting things we found there in the relaunched Samaritain was a brand called Tash Clothing, TACH, which is designed by our Armenians in Uruguay, handmade clothes which are inspired by, as they put it, they take inspiration from the delicacy of vintage clothing and look to make it fresh again. So the kind of thing, in fact, exactly the kind of thing that Relique is selling up in the other two department stores where it's popped up. So I'm kind of fascinated by why retro is so powerful just now and why new brands are charging 200 or 300 euros for something that you would expect to get secondhand for 20 euros. I'm amused to see that brands like Tash are there reproducing retro, but I'd rather buy the original cheap stuff. Anyway, talking of buying original things, this is from our local flea market here. This is a bed sheet with a design by he was the original Japanese designer for Marimekko in Finland. He went to live in Finland and he designed, this is not my favorite of his fabrics, but since it was just on a table for €2 down there in the market, I thought, have to snap this up. And I hate cars though, so I don't want to sleep on a motif of cars. But he's the guy who went back to Japan and founded Soso in Kyoto, which was my premium supply source for tabi shoes, the divided toe shoes and tabi socks, and Japanese traditional clothes adapted to modernity, and they have developed the hallmark of Marimekko, which is these patterns to some extent. So many things to do with colour, creativity, art, design excite me, and there are things which are, you could dismiss them as unimportant, especially in a time of crisis and epidemics and all the rest of it, but they are the little things that make life really sweet for me, and they're not expensive things. Paris is an expensive city. It was just recently ranked as one of the most expensive. I think it's the second most expensive city in the world to live in, more than London, which surprised me a great deal, more than London and New York. But you don't have to live here expensively. The coffee is a little bit more expensive. You might spend €7 if you go to Café Kitsune. If you sit inside at Café Kitsune, you'll spend €7 on a flat white, which is ridiculous. Of the cafes that we've been investigating this month, I would recommend a place called Substance, which is a kind of ridiculous barista-dominated cafe, more like a laboratory, a tasting laboratory for coffee, where they've taken the third wave coffee thing to such an extent that you really should call it fourth wave. It's this rather opinionated barista holding forth from behind a kind of sushi chef enclosure. Worth a visit, but I don't think I'll be going back there because I was a bit scared. All the talk about the exact temperature of the roasting of the beans and all the rest of it puts me off a bit. And everybody else there, when we visited, seemed to be a trainee barista, so it was more like going to a college about coffee. Another one is a place called The Coffee, which was taking minimalism to such an extent that you really felt you were inside a fridge. What else? There's a place called Partisan, which we're going to a lot. But actually the things which have pleased me the most in terms of going out to have a hot drink recently, it's either bubble tea, not hot bubble tea, cold bubble tea, or else I like going to Korean cafes. So in Berlin there's this new one called Lia Pang, which I really like. It's decorated, again, in a retro 70s cheerful style with orange and red plastic chairs and orange lampshades and things like that. But very fresh, a little bit too sugary in terms of what she sells. Leah, who runs it, tends to put a lot of sugar even in the coffee, which is a no-no for me. But there's an even better one here in Paris, which is called Plus 82, down in the just off the Rue Mouffetard on the left bank, and it's run by a very sensitive Korean couple who Plus 82, of course, is the dial code for Korea, for South Korea. And they do very good, they do coffee with no sugar in it, and they also do bingsu, which is this amazing dish of shaved ice with lots of fruit, or I like the sliced mango one they do at Plus 82. And Plus 82 is on the Rue Vauquelin. And those are the things rocking. Or there's a little stationery store called Papier Tigre, which I think there's a photograph on my Tumblr somewhere of Naomi looking at a kind of spray blended cover on a notebook, which reminds me of the paper cups that they give you when you go to our favourite bubble tea place, which is called which is on the Leitze, which is on the Passage Choiset, which is in the Opera District, one of these hidden arcades, such as Walter Benjamin would have been writing about in the Arcades Project. So the original shopping malls were here in Paris, and they were on the arcades. It's a sunny day today, which is pretty amazing. There hasn't been very much sunshine. It's very cold though, I think -4 centigrade minimum. So wrap up well if you're going out today in Paris. Another thing we're doing actually is watching, not only dressing to be stopped on the street by these "what are people wearing in Paris" videos, which so far hasn't happened. The closest we came was that we were in Partisan Cafe, and I photographed a woman with a pink coat which had a face on the back. It reminded me of the faces painted on the backsides of the elephants in Babar the Elephant. And this same person, dressed exactly the same way, so filmed obviously on the same day as I saw her, popped up in a style video, what are people wearing in the streets of Paris, a few days later. So, gosh, what else? Oh yes, there's a bookshop called Junkrudo in the Opera District again, which is... it's got a lot of anime and manga stuff which doesn't appeal to me, but I did like very much a book by Ayako Ishiguro, which is called Yokai Cats. She's an illustrator who's married to Junji Ito, who's apparently a bit of a cult illustrator, and she takes yokai legends. Yokai is a kind of Japanese monster of folklore, and sometimes they're shaped like umbrellas, the ghostly monster umbrella, or a big sea slug or something like that. So she's just done a book full of cats in the style of these old yokai drawings. a few exhibitions and things. I saw yesterday the exhibition at the Palais de Tokyo, which is the Bobo atelier par excellence, the kind of bohemian bourgeois with fake cracked architecture, actually very good architecture, modelled a little bit on Kunstwerk in Berlin, I think, but it's currently showing an exhibition of African artists, and there were more staff there when I visited than there were visitors, But what else? We saw an interesting costume exhibition with some paintings of gypsies and things at in the Gallery of the Beaux-Arts. There is a big exhibition of Ettore Sottsass actually in the Pompidou Centre currently, which I haven't seen yet, but I'm a huge fan of Ettore Sottsass, who lived to a ripe old age, like Richard Rogers, who's just died. These people inspire me as, people who reintroduced colour to the world. Richard Rogers, of course, designed the Pompidou Centre and put all those bright colours on the pipes and things. And now Ettore Sottsass, I think until January or February of next year, is showing he was the founder of Memphis, the Italian, the Milan-based design group who designed a lot of furniture. We also saw an exhibition of his furniture at the Printemps department store. So there's a kind of Ettore Sottsass bubbling under feeling in Paris just now. I also really liked, talking of design and, household items that make you feel happier in your life. There was a really interesting light shade, a series of lampshades in the newly launched Samaritain, which was designed by a guy called Jeremy Maxwell Winterbert, and it's called Clouds. The series is called Clouds, and each one is a different shape. They're kind of blown in an irregular way, so they're kind of like sea melons or squid or polyps or something like that. And they've got these lines painted on them, smeared lines. He's got an atelier actually not far from here on the Avenue Daumesnil, which I would like to peer into at some point. The other thing that jumped out and caught my attention was a Gucci advertisement just around the corner from my flat here. Gucci Eyewear from late 2020. It was an image of a very nerdy guy with 70s style with his arm around a black girl in a gondola in Venice. And this was a campaign overseen by Alessandro Michele, who's the creative director at Gucci and has been for 5 years at least. And filmed, the videographer on it was Akinola Davis Jr., who a black fashion photographer whose website I would recommend, as a source of amazing African inspiration. If you want, continuing the Palais de Tokyo theme of Africa, the Gucci campaign was attacked apparently in some British tabloids for getting retro wrong because they have Yazoo singing Don't Leave from 1982, combined with computers from 1994 and fashions from the 70s. And this, I think it's the Daily Express, wrote this blasting article in their fashion section about how wrong all this was. But I think the point of retro is not to be a BBC historical costume drama and to get all the details right. It's not a museum of style. It's more like saying, let's let young people, go in magpie-like and just take what they want from each decade and make an idealized version of what those decades are like. A bit like when you idealize a country, that you've never been to. And it's always much more amazing in your imagination than it can ever be in real life. So the 70s that we now reconstruct with little found shirts and things like that is probably much better than the real 70s was. And so we can leave it to young people who do get the details wrong and do mix it up with the wrong period of computers or the wrong period of wrong inverted commas. I think it's all to the good, and it creates a much more interesting parallel world where there were 1972 clothes with 1994 computers with, electro-pop hits from 1982. That's all I want to say to you today, so I'm going out to enjoy the sunshine.
Open University.